Our next guest wins re-election in 2026. He'd be poised to be the longest-running governor in Texas. Already was the longest-serving attorney general in Texas history. Also was a justice on the state Supreme Court. You got all those things, Governor Abbott, which puts you in a pretty unique position to comment on some of this latest stuff with the deportations. There's so many different angles to talk about it, but I don't know if there's anyone in a better position that had a better front row seat of what's going on that border in the last administration and in this administration. You're probably the best person to comment on it. What differences have you seen now?
We've never seen a change as much as we saw 4 years ago and now this year with regard to what's happening on the border. What began happening 4 years ago, of course, was a complete failure to enforce the immigration laws of the United States of America. And as a result, we saw an all-time record number of people crossing the border illegally, more than 11 million people, including people who are known murderers, rapists, and gang members and cartel members. And as a result, the crime across the country skyrocketed. Now, in the immediate aftermath of the Trump election and Trump taking office, it's gone from 11 million people crossing the border illegally to just a trickle, as in just a handful of people. I was with some officials from El Paso last night, and they said that where there had been 3,000 people crossing the border sometimes a day just in El Paso, there were now nine people a day. And the people who do make it across the border now, they are immediately arrested and then deported, and as a result, discouraging people from entering the border again. And so, quite literally, in February was an all-time recorded low of the number of people crossing the border illegally. And we are seeing that now in the state of Texas with a massive reduction in illegal entries into our state.
Well, I'll tell you where I was going with that and why I mentioned your service on the state Supreme Court as well. There's a piece in the Journal today talking about Trump, deportations, and the law. And you'd think this was, the reason I like this, the Journal does take issue with maybe going against what the courts are saying, but at least they bring it back to the president was elected to do the opposite of what the Biden administration did in terms of abusing the justice system. He was, you can see at the end there, Governor, Mr. Trump was elected to stop that, not imitate it. And I'm just wondering what you think of the judge's decision with these, I don't know, has it been litigated that they're all gang members? They're bad people, it seems like, that we were we're on that plane to El Salvador. A judge, once again, one single judge, wants that plane to turn around. And after a deal's already been made with El Salvador, the Journal's arguing that, I don't know, I think the Journal's saying the plane should have turned around and come back to abide by the court's decision. What's the right move on this?
So to get into the way the law works, Joe, and that is, first, as you point out, I used to be a Supreme Court justice and then the Attorney General of Texas. I've litigated these issues quite frequently. And a lot of people in the business world, they forget the way the Constitution was constructed, and that is there's the separation of powers. The executive branch has authority that can operate independently of the legislative and the judicial branches, and you got to look into the bowels of the details of it to see whether or not that is a pure separation here. But what the Trump administration is saying is that they have the independent authority that cannot be overridden by the judicial branch or by the legislative branch to execute these laws. Remember what Trump is doing. He's just not saying, oh, well, we're going to do this because we want to do it. Trump is enforcing laws that are already on the book, and that's exactly what the Constitution requires the executive branch to do.
But isn't there an interpretation of the law that the courts are responsible for?
So, Becky, you are correct. There are interpretations of the law all the time. However, I can equally tell you that there are many times when the interpretation of the law is erroneous or is overextensive or over-inclusive. And, you know, we have some trial court judges in the United States of America that erroneously apply the law and tie the hands of the executive branch. And what the Trump administration believes, and I'm just going on guesswork here, they're more than happy to step up and test the limits of what the courts will rule are the powers of the executive branch here. Point one, but point two. So let me just make
I
this
mean,
point real quick.
I get that, but
Well,
isn't it? I guess the question is, can a stay be enforced by the courts while you wait for this to play out? Maybe play up to the Supreme Court to see how they come down on these things. What happens in the meantime? Who has the upper hand?
So
Who has the right?
In the short term, there can be a stay that can be immediately appealed up to the United States Supreme Court. That's different in a way from a flight that's in the air all the way to dropping off in whatever country they're going to be dropping off these people who are very dangerous gang members. I don't believe there's going to be a court order that requires the Trump administration to go back to whatever country they drop these people off in and pick them back up and bring them back to the United States.
It's amazing that we're talking about possibilities like that. You probably want to talk about Texas. Great. I guess you would argue it's the best state for business, obviously, as the governor. But what's going on? You got something with Delaware. I know there's been some op-eds that you wrote. Also, the Texas Stock Exchange. Where does that stand right now?
Well, let's just look at the objective data. Texas is the economic engine of the United States. The report breakdown for the states just came out, and for the past month and the past year, Texas ranks #1 for the most new jobs added, and we've been #1 for the most new jobs for years now. Early this month, were recognized as the #1 state for business relocations and expansions. The key here is that we've been #1 for 13 years in a row. Texas has the best business climate in America, and now we've created the best business courts in the United States. And as a result, as much as we've seen a massive inflow of businesses from other states coming to the state of Texas, that inflow is now even accelerating even more because the business courts make it even more business friendly in our state.
How about as far as Delaware goes? We had the governor of Delaware on. He didn't see any benefit to going to Texas at all. He also didn't know. We mentioned someone named Elon, and he didn't know who that was. He had no idea who. So he said it was bizarre. He said Elon who.
Well, I can tell you two big differences for those who are corporate counsel out there to know the difference between the Texas business courts and the Delaware business courts, and that is what happened in Delaware. The reason why companies are leaving there and incorporating in the state of Texas is because in Texas we are going to strictly apply the business judgment rule. We're codifying it right now, but also we're limiting to some extent those who can bring derivative actions. That's what was brought against Elon Musk by a guy who owned, I think it was 6 or 9 shares of Tesla stock. So get this, a guy who had the value less than a Tesla vehicle was able to try to upend the entire corporate practices of the Tesla company. That's just wrong. And so what we are trying to codify in Texas is ownership of at least 3% of a business before a derivative action can be brought against a company.
When will what are we calling it, the Texie? The Texas Stock Exchange? When's it launching? So, if everything goes smoothly?
Structurally, they're up and running for both listings as well as trading. That's expected about this time next year. They're making very rapid progress. Here in the course of the next few months, they need to get approval by the SEC, and then they're off and running.
NASDAQ as well, right?
Well, NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange, now they've realized, Texas is the #1 state for New York Stock Exchange listings. And now the New York Stock Exchange has moved their Chicago headquarters to Dallas. And now the NASDAQ is opening up a facility in Dallas. And so now what stock exchanges, capital markets are realizing, the place to be is the state of Texas. And we have competition. And one thing Texas is up for is competition. So with the Texas Stock Exchange will be battling against New York and Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. There's one big difference there, Joe, and that is the brand. Right now, the brand of Texas is a stronger brand than New York. And to be labeled the Texas Stock Exchange in the coming years, I think will be a strong magnet for the expansion of that stock exchange right here in the great state of Texas.